Let's Code Season 4, this time it's personal. In this episode, we're going to start working on some of our classes. Looking at our planning, the first thing that appears on our list is location, so it makes sense, that's going to be the first thing that we're going to work on. So what we need to do is we need to create a new file inside our core folder, which is what we're going to do, and we're going to call it classes.rpy. First thing we're going to do is do an init Python block, like so, end it with a colon, and then we're ready to start adding our classes. Now, first thing we're going to do is declare a class, and we're going to call it place, and it's going to inherit from the object class, and then we're going to terminate that with a colon as well. Next thing we need to do is define our init, like so. That's basically what we're doing, is we're saying when this class is initiated, we need to give it these properties. The first thing is we have to give it a self, and then we're going to give it a name. We'll give it a nice name. We'll give it an opening hour. We'll give it a closing hour. I don't know why I gave that a capital C. Let's keep with our naming convention. And then we can also give it a parent property and a map true or false, and then a locked property. That should probably cover us for now. There's quite a lot going on there. So the name is obviously going to be the name that we're going to use in code, the kind of codified name. The nice name is going to be the name that we present to the viewer. So the first thing we need to do is go self.name equals name, self.nice name equals nice name, self.opening equals opening, self.closing equals closing, self.parent parent, self.map equals map, self.locked equals locked. Now, as we can see, map is a keyword, so we're going to change this to map icon, like that. And what we're doing with this property is we're saying if it's going to appear on a map or not. If it's like, for example, your bedroom, you don't want your bedroom to appear on the map, you want your house to appear on the map, and then when you enter your house, then you can transit to that location, provided that that's the way we decide to go with this. Next thing I want to do is give it a property, and the property is going to be open. I'm going to get rid of the capital I think it looks better with a small I, is open, and it's going to be a self property. And we're going to, now we need to add some variables. So what we're going to do in our core, we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call this defines_defaults.rpy. Going to create a new variable called location. And we're also going to create one called time. So we're going to say default hour. Actually, I'm going to call it time of day, because we're not going to have specific a number of kind of hours in here. So we're going to say time of day equals, and then we're going to set that to a string. We're going to call it morning, like so. We're going to save that. Then we're going to declare global, and we're going to set global to our time of day. I better just go back to my defines and defaults and check that I've got that spelled correctly. Just double click on that, Control V. Okay, so we can have it so that certain venues are only open in the morning or the evening. So what we'll say is that we'll have this, they're not going to be opening hours, they're going to be opening times of day. So we can say opening morning, closing night, or whatever. In fact, what we could do in hindsight is we could actually just have opening as a list of times, so we can get rid of closing altogether, like that. And then opening can be a list of times of day, and the time of day can be just a number, for example. So what I could do is have like this, default time of day with a capital T, and then this is going to be a list of morning, afternoon, evening, night. I don't know what's happened there. I may have jumped the gun a little bit. There we go. All right, so there we go. Like that. And we could even have maybe some in between. So we could have morning, comma, lunch, comma, afternoon. So we can have more, you know, we could have like dawn, morning, lunch, afternoon, evening, and then we could have dusk as another one. And then night. And then all we can have to do now is we just say that time of day is actually just going to be a number, and it's going to be, let's say, number 2, or in this case number 1, because that's actually property number 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like so. Okay, I think we got that pretty well sorted out. So we can say we've got global time of day, and now all we have to do is, again, we could go back to having opening and closing times as numbers if we wanted to. I actually think in hindsight that's not a bad idea. So we'll put closing property back in, and self.closing equals closing, like so. And then all we have to do is say if time of day is greater than or equal to self.opening and time of day is less than. Do we want now? That's an interesting question. So, do we want closing time to be inclusive of the time of day that we set it, or do we want it to be? So, if I said it shuts in the evening, is it open in the evening and shuts after evening finishes? Or do we want it so that it shuts prior to evening? I think I'm going to say less than self.opening. And then if we decide further down the line that we want to change that, we can do. All we have to do is, oh, that's actually meant to say closing. Silly me. Like that. And then all we have to do is say return true. And then if it's not the case, we just say return false. So it's a simple true or false value, but all we're doing is, rather than having to faff around and check every single time whether the time of day is between the opening and closing times, we just got this little method here that we can say if place dot is open, and it'll return true or false if our location is open or not. Cool. So what we can do now is we can actually we can either in the init Python block, or we can add a label inside the defaults and defines folder, which is going to create as a list of locations. So I think what we'll do is we'll create a label. We'll call it initvar or something like that. Label initialize variables. And then we can actually create a list. In fact, we could do the list here, just so that we don't forget it. We'll just say locations equals an empty list. And then in this label, all we have to do is say locations. And did I do that with a capital L? I did. So we'll give this a capital L, like so. Dot append. And then we can put in our class. So that's going to be place. And then we insert some brackets. And what we can do is we can just simply copy all of these across. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a comment in here. And I'll just say properties for location. And then I can paste that there. And then that just is an aid memoir for when we're putting these in, so we know what property equates to which. So the first thing we need to do is give this one a name. So we'll just say this first location can be kitchen, like so. And then the nice name can be my kitchen with capitals and spelled correctly. Now this one is going to be open throughout the day. So all we have to do is give opening 0. Now closing time, because we currently have closing time set to end before. So if I was to say it was finish at night, it would actually only be open until the end of dusk. So what I need to do is go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I need to set the closing time as 7. Because otherwise we wouldn't be able to get in the kitchen at night. Now you may very well want it to be like that, but for me, I want the player to be able to go to the kitchen, get themselves a drink or whatever every night. Now, parent. In this case, we're going to say the parent location is going to be my_house. The kitchen does not have a map icon, so we're going to say false to that one. And locked is also false because we want it to be open. So there's our first property, our first location. Now, obviously, I've already told the game that there's going to be another location called my house. So what we'll do is we'll actually add another line there, copy and paste that. And now what we can do is we can actually set this to be my house. Let's spell that correctly. And then we're going to say my kitchen. We're going to change that to house as well. We also want this to be open 24 hours a day. We can leave the property for parent as my house, because what we can do in our map screen is set it so that if the name and the parent are equal, then it knows that that is the main property or the main location. So we don't have to worry about that right now. Map icon is obviously going to have to be true in case we actually create a map screen. And that we have now 2 working locations which we can utilize later on in our code. Now if we come back into our classes, we can see what we've got here. So I'm going to talk you through it one more time. We've got all of these properties. We've got the name, which is how we're going to refer to it in shorthand in our code. And it's also going to be the name that we use for creating any icons or anything like that. Anything that requires a file name will have this name in it. Nice name is simply going to be what appears in tooltips, in dialogue, and in menus. So that's the bit that the player is presented with that just makes it a little nicer to see. Opening time is when it opens, closing time is when it closes or when it is closed. Parent is a property that we're going to use to decide whether or not this is going to be a, for example, my house is the parent of my kitchen. My kitchen might very well be the parent of my cupboard or something like that. Map icon is just our way of deciding whether or not this is going to appear on our map, because some locations may very well not want a map location. For example, secret dungeons and things like that you can only get to by luck or by going through certain parts of the story, but we still need locations for them. And then locked is just a way of telling the game whether or not this property is currently accessible, and if, for example, it has a map icon but it is locked, then we can also choose to not put the icon on the screen. This is open property. It's simply our way of quickly ascertaining whether or not this is accessible or not. So we can say if it's unlocked and it has a map icon but we are outside its opening times, then it still won't put an icon on the map, or it will give us a message when we try and click on it. Then we've created an empty list here underneath the definition for the class, just so that we don't lose track of it. And then in our defaults and defines label, we've started defining some of our locations. So that should about wrap it up for this episode. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you found that useful. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. But until then, you take damn good care of yourselves, alright? Bye bye.